Okay, so Eddie Van Halen, I'm not. Let's put that to bed. Welcome to Zombie Tactics today, and I wanted to talk to you about a couple of subjects that are near and dear to my heart, including, among other things, guitars. I'm going to take this off for a second, and we'll fade in or whatever. Okay, we're back. I promise I won't threaten you with playing the guitar again. Just a little hobby of mine, a bit of an amateur musician, and that does bear a little bit on the discussion today, so I'll bring the guitar back in here, but I promise not to play it. I'm holding a couple of other things in here in my hand that you probably would think would be as far from a guitar and as far from a subject of GunFu as possible, but they have a bearing on what I want to talk about today. This hammer has been around for probably 20 years in my possession, and it has served me well. I haven't maintained it especially well, and frankly I'm a little embarrassed about that. I should get out some navel jelly or something and at least get the rust off this puppy, but it's doing fine. I got another hammer here that came with a child's toolkit for building a birdhouse, and just coincidentally it came from the Home Depot, and I'm wearing my old school Tony Stewart Home Depot jersey today. That was strictly a coincidence, I assure you. But both of these are what we would call tools, and we don't really worry about them a lot except for their utility. It's either a good hammer or a bad hammer for whatever kind of nails that we're pounding and, you know, or extracting if we use the claw end of it. I've never seen anybody who was a serious carpenter get really worried about, ooh, my hammer got scratched up, or ooh, there's a little bit of rust on it, although that's not a little bit of rust, that's a lot of rust. Because they look at them as tools, and those tools are there for a purpose. Now, it wasn't too long ago, I was in a 4-day handgun training in Nevada, and we were training with a number of folks, probably about 20 of us in the class, and about halfway through the second day of the class, as we're walking up to the line to do whatever exercise we're going to do, there was a gentleman there who had a very fine quality, just happened to be a 1911 style pistol in his holster, and I guess we were just kind of jogging up to the line or whatever, and he didn't have that, his retention mechanism or whatever properly engaged, or maybe the holster was just loose to begin with, and it came out of the holster and dropped onto the very sharp, rocky gravel, and somehow it got in front of him, and so not only did he have the pistol fall out of the holster, but on top of that he stepped right on it with a deciding crunch, just into the gravel. And he made a sound that was a cross between cussing under his breath and whimpering like a child. And the range master kind of said, whoa, stop, you know, let's pick it up, let's make sure everything's okay with it. And he did, and he picked it up, and he made sure that it was functioning correctly, and kind of dusted it off a little bit, and then carefully stuck it back in the gentleman's holster, and we continued the rest of that day. But from that point on, the gentleman who owned that pistol, his entire countenance and attitude changed in that course. Up to that point in time, I would say that he'd been a full, enthusiastic participant in the course, learning how to implement, how to use his handgun in a defensive type of encounter, and doing a good job of the course, and again, approaching it enthusiastically. But from that moment on, it was evident that all he was worried about was how he had scratched up his very fine quality 1911 style pistol. Now, I kind of half remember this, but I think it was some kind of a Nighthawk, and it had a very polished mirror finish slide on it, and if I recall correctly, this pistol cost him somewhere around $3,000. So I can't fault the man for thinking, oh crap, I just scratched the hell out of the slide on this very fine quality pistol of mine. But from that point on, he was really not a full participant in the class because he was more worried about his pistol and it being scratched up than anything else. As a matter of fact, he continued to grouse about it through the rest of that day. And the next day, as we got together in the morning, he was kind of talking with some other people and talking about how he called the manufacturer, seen about getting a replacement slide on for it, and how expensive that was going to be. He talked to some local gunsmiths about buffing it out, and pretty much his attitude was that he had ruined his gun, that it was ruined. He was very upset about how much it was going to cost to get another mirror finish slide for it and all kinds of things like that. Now, this was despite the fact that the pistol continued to operate flawlessly in the course. And he continued to grouse and gripe and moan about it. And it seemed like every time he took the pistol out, we did some kind of an exercise and he fired it. Not only was he, reholstering it, but he was like sitting there a second and just looking at it and just going, crap, that kind of thing. And then it would go back in his holster. Well, he finished out that second day. He finished out the third day without any enthusiasm at all. And the fourth day, he didn't show up. And we kind of all guessed that it was because he was just so dispirited about, quote unquote, ruining his very expensive pistol that he just couldn't go on. And I couldn't help thinking about it at the time and saying, well, this is a defensive handgun class. Why did you bring a $3,000 gun to a defensive handgun class? Ostensibly, you're supposed to bring at least a weapon that you can see yourself carrying concealed, carrying with you all the time. A gun that by definition is going to get messed up as you use it over time. Not a safe queen, not some prized, thing you're going to put in a case on the wall for everybody to admire the workmanship of. And this kind of goes into my whole thinking about this. There is a difference between tools and toys. And I would advise those of you who are serious about learning to use a gun for defensive purposes, for combat purposes, for, SHTF, WROL, zombies, whatever, to look carefully at the equipment you have and your attitude about the equipment you have and determine whether or not it's a tool or it's a toy. Now, I have another story having to do with the guitar that I just had, loosely having to do with the guitar because I'm an amateur musician. And it bears on this subject as well. I happen to be an acquaintance of a pretty doggone famous rock guitarist. He's been on many people's lists of the top 100 living guitarists today. He's well known in the industry. I'm not dropping any names here. And I'd say he's a friendly acquaintance. I won't say we're good friends or best friends or even friends. I have been to the guy's house for meetings and things like that because I've on occasion done sound or done lights for him and things like that. Now, not too long ago, he was on a trip to go play some stadium someplace, and the airline lost, or more likely his guitars were stolen, and he ended up in a particular city without a guitar. So he promptly went to the local guitar center and they recognized him and they hooked him up, and he bought a fairly medium quality guitar, and that's the guitar he continues to play today. Not some $5,000-$6,000 guitar. I imagine something very serviceable in the $1,200 to $1,500 range if I recognize the model he's got. And over time he'll put certain pickups in it or whatever like that. But as I was talking to him about this experience, I noticed that guitar that he had was just like gouged out in this area right here. And I'd heard about certain guitar players who like to sculpt this area out because it's an armrest for them. It makes it more comfortable to play. And so I said, oh, I see you sculpted out an armrest area there for you on your Strat. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, obviously you've taken, a file, a hasp, something, and you practically routed out that area of the guitar. I can't imagine you doing that for any other reason. And he says, no, this is my philosophy. I'm a musician and I make music. And when I get a guitar, the first thing I do is I take it up to a wall and I go ding with the body of it. And then I take it up to a post and I put another ding, ding. in the body of it. And then I take a file and I put nicks and I scratch gouges out with it, because none of those things with an electric guitar really are going to affect the sound of it, given that the basic construction of the guitar is sound to begin with, as long as you don't mess up the neck or something else about the guitar. And so why do you do that? He says, because I'm a musician and I make music, and I don't want my guitars to be some precious item to me that I'm always worried about polishing and always worried about the finish on it and everything. And so the minute I get a new guitar, I do that to it, because from that moment on, it's no longer a toy. It's a tool for making music, and I can stop worrying about the guitar and start worrying about the music. I would advise you, based upon the guitar experience of a very well-known rock guitarist, based upon applying the principle of the hammer, and based upon my experience in a 4-day handgun class with a gentleman who just couldn't go on because he had a couple scratches in an otherwise perfectly operating .45 caliber pistol, to consider your equipment and whether what you have are tools or toys. Maybe it's time to look at them as tools, to treat them accordingly, to keep them serviceable and able to do the job, but not get too worried about getting pretty or making sure that everything is always pristine. That's Zombie Tactics for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.